show me how to get this money, man.
I'm still in a rush. I need to meet a client, man. But I've got something for you still.
Yeah, what's this?
It's got everything you need to know, man.
Hey, yo, make sure you're logging on, go and get the Hustlers Oldie book as well, man. So you can learn how to get it in like my brother S, you get me? And my brother Malone, you get me?
When you talk about morality and ethics, if you want effective citizens, and when I say effective citizens, this is people who contribute to a nation instead of just sucking from a nation.
Yeah.
You've got to be feeding those ethics all along the way. Now, if you have a youth TV platform, one, it's usually music based, right?
Yeah.
Exclusively. You talk about music, you throw in some fashion, some consumer bits. How many youth TV platforms would think about news and current affairs? How many youth TV platforms would be thinking about...
They usually leave that out still.
Say that again?
They usually leave that out still. Even when they do platforms, entertainment platforms that's targeted towards black people, like One Extra and all of that. I don't really hear... I don't know. I ain't listened recently still, but I remember back in the day, there never used to be no current affairs and news coverage, like, and serious discussions and things like that. You get me?
So you brought up a platform. So you got Radio 1 Extra and you got Capital Extra. Yeah. But we're not extra. We're enough. We're the main performance. We're who people have come to see. So now I'm going to tell you why Radio 1 Extra exists. Radio 1 Extra exists because Radio 1 was losing listeners. See, the more a marketplace proliferates, the growth of competition, you're going to start to lose market share. Now, we're the hottest thing. We always have been, and we always will be. We're just cool. We're funny. We're the best sufferers because we suffer in joy. Turn on liquor music, put food there, and we're with family, and we're enjoying. And we are at the bottom of every measurable metric. So we make shit hot. So we don't need to pretend. We're aware of this. What Radio 1 did was broadcast the Radio 1 Extra signal over the Radio 1 to gain the urban listenership that they wanted to increase their market share. Now, I happen to know Rampage when they were doing the show, and then when they no longer needed them, because they built up audience share, they 86 their show.
86 their show?
They got rid of it.
Okay.
Just like they did with Steve Jackson at Kiss FM, and they put the Oi Boy in his hot seat. It was like an apprentice to him all the way. Another black man who had a breakfast show that had one of the biggest listenerships. Then you got Capital 1 Extra, which was born from purchasing our biggest station,
Choice
FM.
Yeah.
Now, what they did was they denied Choice FM a London-wide license. So they had a South London license, and then they had a separate North London license. But they couldn't capacity build their business in terms, because a radio station is an advertising business. The brands want the ears so they can align their values with the listeners. Mm-hmm. Now, the minute that Capital bought it, they got a London-wide license.
So how'd that go? So how come they weren't allowed, who never granted them a London-wide license?
Well, that's what Ofcom is. That's what Ofcom does.
Yeah.
So when you have a European institution and we talk about racism, racism is about power.
But what was their given reason for them? What you saying? They applied for the license and they got denied.
Why do you need to give a reason?
They never give no reason.
I just want
to know what they say.
Okay. So let me ask you a question now. You go to a bank to open a bank account, because part of being a full citizen who can express themselves in the United Kingdom is having a bank account, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does it matter what I tell you if you can't open the account? Because in order to be a full, and I send you away, and you might meet the next criteria. I just moved the goalposts.
Change again.
So they moved the goalposts. This is the game.
At least then, if that's what happens, then you can say the reason I never got my thing is because X, Y, Z, and you can demonstrate why it's unfair.
So may I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you think you're rediscovering America for anybody?
No.
Do you think there's anybody black that doesn't know it's unfair? Do you think there are any
'Cause you know-
Europeans,
you know-
bear with me,
Yeah.
do you think there are any Europeans in authority that don't know it's fair? They know it's unfair. So what we do is, again, I keep reverting back to the fact that we speak because we have lips. You see, innovation, we're the greatest inventors because we create based on necessity. Do you know what I realized when I was thinking about Indigo? Anybody who is going for a license can be turned down. Now, when you are involved in tech creates parity with Europeans. It levels the playing field. Why will a Michael Johnson win in 100 meters? Because he's on a level playing field with Europeans. Why can Nipsey's store marathon compete with Europeans? Because he's on a level playing field. Why can Blavity go and compete with any other social network that's going to draw the eyes of African Caribbeans or African Americans or anyone in the African diaspora? Because we compete based on parity. There are no barriers anymore. And if I enter the marketplace with £100,000 startup, I can immediately compete with YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Number one, if my values are aligned with yours, I'm not going to lock off what you say. And I'm going to champion what you say. And then we're going to polish what you say. And we're going to put it on steroids. And then we're going to monetize what you say. So you could become a stakeholder. Look, can we go with a show to YouTube and say, we're going to go to brands and we want them to pay 35,000 for an episodic drama, and there's 10. So that's 350 grand you're committing yourself to. But this is an international platform that might draw 10 million eyeballs, not black eyeballs, but youth eyeballs internationally. Now, if you're a brand and you know that there's one destination that all these eyeballs come to because they get international news, current affairs, told in a youth language, which they understand, which isn't patronizing, which encourages them to debate, so it provokes them and it draws them in. You got sports commentary, so you could have an AJ in the studio with a rapper, and you creating an entirely new audience for football, basketball, cricket, whatever the sport may be. Now, when you realize that, it's worth money, right? Mm-hmm. What are we always told? Just do it. Do it for free. Volunteer. Why volunteer? If we're hot, we got to start capitalizing on our social currency. And we're not. Other people capitalize on our social currency. And then what do they tell us? We're wrong. And then you'll have rappers talking about money they don't have. You got trappers going out to get money. Everybody's demonizing everybody over money, but nobody's talking about legitimate business and owning a business to make something £100 million company in the course of 5 years.
But Uncle, I want to go back to the Choice FM being denied car
license.
The license.
The London-wide license.
Yeah, because racism, and having the and being able to demonstrate the process of the actual what happened, what man is just calling racism.
Okay.
Not saying
so
that,
number one,
number
one, just for clarity, racism is.
You want my definition?
Racism is power. Can we agree?
I don't know. See when it comes
prejudice.
to me,
Look.
See when it comes
you
to
can
me,
look at me,
and racism, and just words in general.
So you can
I ain't a man who
no problem.
Who really that goes along with people's definition of. When I discuss with someone, I try to explain with as much detail as I can.
Absolutely.
What I'm talking about, and then what you want to label, you label it. You get me? Because I feel like a lot of trigger words, I call them, they get used by different people for different reasons.
Absolutely. Based on...
And lessens the value of the word.
Based on their obtuse understanding or their minute understanding of the concept. So racism is a power dynamic with an aggressor and a victim. Racism is also a team sport. Like racism isn't like boxing. of football.
Okay.
So is your 11 versus my 11. Now, I might not be aware that this is a Premiership game, and I may have come for a five-a-side kickabout. So am I really competing with you? So your 11 understand that we must connect state through education, mass communication. So if I want to stunt your community's growth and understanding, and you're looking for a London-wide license, why would it be in the interests of Europeans to keep that on ice? And we're talking about mass communication now. In the heyday,
there'll be less competition.
it's not competition. You see, if
Like
you want to spread
in terms of influencing the masses to
influence,
yeah.
if you own a mass communication outlet, you can say and convey any message. Now, if you effectively convey messages, you're creating a problem over here, right?
Yeah.
So that might be an impetus for me to shut down your license.
Most definitely.
For a London-wide license.
Most definitely.
Because what you're talking about with a London-wide license is the effective organization of African people across the country.
But what I'm saying is that when we're discussing amongst ourselves why this our idea never came to fruition, we should be able to discuss it with as much detail as me and you are discussing it right
Absolutely,
now.
I
Other than
concur.
just saying our thing never got through because of racism.
Absolutely. But then in the demonstration of the 3 applications that Choice FM, because they're not free, to apply for a license, you got to pay to get knocked. It's 50
Okay.
grand.
Yeah.
Oh, goddamn.
Okay.
Okay. So it's not free to apply for that London-wide license. Because number one, you've got to get your solicitors to create all of the paperwork. You got to create your case. So you're paying researchers, you're paying staff to create this case.
Yeah.
For why it's different this time, based on what you told me in terms of criteria last time. Now, I'm just going to say this to you.
We said business lawyers and all of that.
So anytime you have to ask permission, you're dealing with a power dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I can have legislation that says something should be a particular way, and I go against that, that's what racism is. It's one rule for one set of people and another rule for another set of people. And the clear demonstration of that was when Capital purchased Choice FM, they got a London-wide license overnight.
And in the application for that London-wide license, did they do anything different to what Choice FM done?
It's entirely possible.
Yeah, but like you said, they could have just moved the goalposts for them because them asking now, they might just say, all right, boom, we can't make it get exactly how they wanted to get it. But if you do this, which they never done, if they would have done it, then we would have said, nah, you have to do something different. But because they never done it, we can say this is the reason why we gave it to you and not them. It might be like that. You know that? But
so first
I'm just
of
saying,
all,
I just want to know though, you get me?
we
I just wanna
really
know. I like to know.
underestimate.
I like to know things.
One of the things we really underestimate are the roles of secret societies.
The forces arrayed against us.
And, you know, if you're a European who belongs to a lodge and has a particular understanding, and this is your brother over here, no matter if there's a conflict of interest, it's going to go down in Chinatown. So whenever we're applying for licenses, understand we're playing a game that we've already lost.
Okay.
Because if you're reliant on somebody's permission
To be granted.
to create a vehicle, you've already lost. Because if that body can say no with the opinion of a man, you've lost.
Yeah. It's like Mos Def said, they grant you the illusion of freedom when it's just a license, innit? So you're not free, you're only license.
It's a license.
Yeah.
What is a TV license in the UK? It's a compulsory subscription to the BBC. So you pay that compulsory subscription in agreement to be propagated by the state who own the BBC.
Enough people
Just so
don't-
you know.
Enough people don't even want it. They don't even want BBC.
So the point being is that I'm trying to remember the writer's name who wrote 1984 and Animal Farm.
Orwell.
Not Orson Welles.
No,
George Orwell.
Yeah.
George Orwell was an MI5 agent whose role was to write propaganda for the BBC during the Second World War.
Yeah.
The purposes of the BBC actually being incorporated was to propagate the British people, to give them hope. Because what we don't take into account is what the self-esteem of a nation actually means to the function of a nation. Because if you think it's a rap, think about just how bestial we're capable of being as human beings. We're not decent. Human beings are the least decent species on the planet. Now, we've seen what happens when society breaks down. So there's a necessity.
We was talking about it, we was touching on it a bit at the beginning as well.
Right.
Brilliant thing. Yeah.
To propagate. So he was an MI5 agent. So based off of his inside knowledge of what the agency was planning over the next 100 years, because they have a 100-year plan, he told us about the CCTV. He told us about all of the Orwellian, what we term Orwellian control systems. And now we've seen them come to fruition. So it's not that he was just the most creative. He wasn't crazy. It was based on something, right? So now we know.
Thank you. Yeah?
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't
At
listen
some
to
point,
ITV.
you've got to strip back what isn't working, agree that it's a nonsense, and do something about it. And then you start to build teams of those who are actually going to execute what is necessary to be done. And we've got the appetite for it right now. Remember,